The city was choking in fear. Every alleyway whispered the name Victor, a gangster so ruthless, even the bravest men cowered in his shadow. But in the same dark underworld, there was a light. A man named Leo, forced to work for Victor, but with a heart far different from his boss's. Leo still believed in kindness, even as he walked a dangerous path. On the other side of the city was Sheza, a TV reporter who lived for justice. She hated corruption, especially the kind she reported on every night at prime time. Unknown to her, the man she loved, James, a cop, was no different from the criminals she fought with her words. But when Sheza's world crashes down and two gangsters fall for the same woman, a battle of love, betrayal, and survival unfolds. Lives will be destroyed, hearts shattered, and no one will emerge the same. It was a cold night, and the city, as always, was drenched in crime. Every dark corner, every hidden street was controlled by Victor, the most feared man in town. His name struck terror in the hearts of the city's people. It wasn't just that he ruled the streets, he owned the police, the politicians, even the media. No one dared to challenge him. Victor had built his empire on blood and fear. He took what he wanted, crushed whoever stood in his way, and left a trail of destruction wherever he went. He was untouchable, ruthless, and his ambition knew no limits. But beneath his cold exterior, there was a secret obsession. Every night, after counting his profits and ordering his men around, Victor would sit alone in his lavish penthouse and watch a TV show. Not just any show, but the primetime news hosted by a young, bold reporter named Sheza. Her bright smile and fierce sense of justice intrigued him. She was everything he wasn't, honest, brave, and always fighting for what was right. Victor admired her, but he also wanted her. She was a challenge, something he couldn't buy with money or intimidate with power, and that only fueled his desire. Meanwhile, Leo, Victor's second-in-command, was different. He had joined Victor's crew out of necessity, not choice. Leo had a good heart, but life had dealt him the wrong cards. He hated the violence, the threats, the endless cycle of crime, but in this city, if you weren't working for a man like Victor, you were against him, and being against Victor was a death sentence. Leo always kept his head down, did his job, and tried to avoid the worst of Victor's cruelty. But even he had a line he wouldn't cross. He helped people in secret, sometimes paying off debts for those who couldn't, sometimes giving information to keep others safe. He wasn't proud of his life, but he believed he could still do some good, even if no one knew. Across the city, Sheza lived a different life, but one that was becoming darker by the day. She was engaged to James, a police officer who she thought was as dedicated to justice as she was. For years, they had dreamed of making the city a better place, bringing down men like Victor and cleaning up the streets. But Sheza didn't know the truth about James. James wasn't the man she thought he was. He had started out like her, idealistic, passionate, wanting to make a difference. But the city had a way of corrupting even the best people. Slowly, Victor had wormed his way into James's life, offering money, power, and protection. At first, James had resisted, but the temptation became too much. He took bribes from Victor in exchange for turning a blind eye to his operations. It wasn't long before James was fully in Victor's pocket, doing his dirty work from inside the police department. Sheza, however, had no idea. She still believed James was the good, honest man she had fallen in love with. She continued to fight corruption on her TV show, exposing criminals, holding powerful people accountable, and giving a voice to the voiceless. But the day was coming when her world would be shattered. One fateful night, everything changed. Sheza had been working late at the TV station preparing for the next day's broadcast. She was tired but proud of the work she had done. Her latest investigation had uncovered a series of illegal deals between Victor's crew and some city officials. She was ready to expose them, but she needed one more piece of the puzzle. That's when she found it, a document buried in a folder that connected James to Victor's operations. Her heart stopped. She stared at the paper, her hands trembling. It couldn't be true. Not James, not the man she was going to marry. She looked again, hoping she had made a mistake, but there it was, his name, alongside Victor's, linked in a deal worth millions. She felt sick. Sheza rushed home, her mind racing. She needed to confront James, but she didn't know what she would say. How could he betray her like this? How could he betray everything they stood for? When she arrived, James was sitting on the couch watching TV, completely unaware of what was coming. Sheza stormed in, holding the document in her hand. "James, what is this?" she demanded, throwing the paper at him. James glanced at it, his face turning pale. He knew immediately what it was. For a moment he considered lying, but he could see in Sheza's eyes that she already knew the truth. "It's not what you think," he started, but Sheza cut him off. "Not what I think? Your name is on a document with Victor's. You've been taking money from him? How long has this been going on, James? How long have you been lying to me?" James stood up, trying to calm her down, but she was furious. "I did it for us," he said, his voice low. "You don't understand how hard it is out there. The city is a mess, and Victor, he owns everything. I had no choice." "You had a choice," Sheza spat back. "You always have a choice. You could have said no. You could have walked away. But instead you became just like him. You're no better than the criminals I report on every night." James tried to reach for her, but Sheza stepped back. "We're done, James. I can't be with someone who's part of the problem. I thought you were different, but you're just another corrupt cop." With that, she left, slamming the door behind her. James stood there, staring at the closed door, knowing he had lost her forever. As Sheza walked down the dark street, tears streaming down her face, she didn't notice the car speeding towards her. It swerved at the last minute, but the side mirror clipped her, sending her tumbling to the ground. The car screeched to a halt, and the driver jumped out. It was Leo. He rushed over to help her, but before he could say anything, Sheza slapped him hard across the face. She was angry, hurt, and scared, and seeing a man she didn't know had pushed her over the edge. Leo, shocked, didn't react. Instead, he looked into her eyes and saw the pain she was in. At that moment, something changed inside him. He didn't know who she was, but he felt drawn to her, like she was someone he needed to protect. "I'm sorry," he said softly, helping her to her feet. "Are you okay?" Sheza, still shaking from the accident and the confrontation with James, nodded but didn't say anything. She didn't recognize Leo as one of Victor's men, and he didn't tell her. He just wanted to make sure she was safe. From that moment on, Leo couldn't stop thinking about her. He watched her on the news the next day and realized who she was. Sheza, the woman who stood up against everything he was a part of. But instead of feeling angry, he admired her strength. He wanted to be better because of her. Meanwhile, Victor had been watching Sheza too. He had been in love with her from afar for months, but his love wasn't like Leo's. Victor wanted to possess her, to control her, to make her his. He didn't care about her dreams or her ideals. He just wanted her for himself. When Victor realized that Leo had feelings for Sheza, his jealousy boiled over. He had always seen Leo as someone beneath him, someone he could control, but now Leo was a threat, and threats had to be eliminated. Victor wasn't the only one who wanted Leo gone. James, furious at losing Sheza, had turned to Victor for help. He knew about Leo's feelings for Sheza and wanted revenge. Together, Victor and James plotted to take Leo out once and for all. They set a trap, luring Leo into a secluded warehouse on the edge of the city. Victor's men were waiting, armed and ready. When Leo arrived, he realized too late that he had been set up. The gunfire started and Leo fought back with everything he had, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. Just as it seemed like the end for Leo, something inside him snapped. He thought of Sheza, of the future he wanted with her, of the life he could have if he survived. And that gave him the strength to keep fighting. Leo managed to take down several of Victor's men before escaping the warehouse, injured but alive. He knew that this wasn't over. Victor and James had declared war on him, and there was only one way to end it. Leo gathered his allies, people who, like him, were tired of Victor's reign of terror. Together they launched a full-scale assault on Victor's empire, taking down his operations one by one. It wasn't easy, and Leo nearly lost his life more than once, but he refused to give up. In the final showdown, Leo confronted Victor and James in the very same penthouse where Victor had once watched Sheza on TV. The fight was brutal, with both sides taking heavy blows, but in the end, Leo emerged victorious. Victor lay on the floor, defeated, his empire in ruins. James, realizing that he had lost everything, tried to flee, but Leo caught him. "This is for Sheza," Leo said, as he knocked James out cold. With Victor and James out of the picture, Leo went to find Sheza. She was at the TV station preparing for her next show when Leo walked in, bruised and battered but alive. "I did it," he said softly. "Victor's gone. James is gone. You're safe now." Sheza looked at him, tears in her eyes, and realized that she had fallen in love with him too. Leo wasn't perfect, but he had fought for her, for justice, for a better future. Together they built a new life, free from the shadows of crime. Leo left his old world behind, and Sheza continued her work, always fighting for what was right.